Major support for these broadcasts is provided by New York Community Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chelsea Lighting, Capital One Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Genova Burns, Giantomasi and Webster, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, the Wyckoff Group, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, Bruce Mosler, C.B. Richard Ellis, Colliers International New York, LLC, Cushman & Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, DDG Partners, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Flushing Bank, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knackle Realty Services, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Sterling and Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, and these friends.
There's only one Lloyd Price, and there couldn't be another one. And I'm so happy to continue my conversation on the life of Lloyd Price. Thanks for being here, Lloyd.
Thank you, Mike.
So, Lloyd, you know, what is this? We got Lottie Miss Claudia, we got a book, we got a newly released CD, but let's continue. You know, everybody knows you from Lottie Miss Claudia, which I did find on iHeart this week, and I listened to that. And then there was Stagger Lee, right?
That's right.
Okay, so give me some of the lyrics of Stagger Lee.
Well, there was one in between Stagger Lee
And what was that?
and Lord of Miss Claudia, Just Because.
So what was that? How do you decide? How do you decide to do Just Because?
Well, I got drafted in the Army, Mike, and when I came out to service, see, I started this big beat business with Lord of Miss Claudia. Lord of Miss Claudia was the first record that teenagers, both black and white, bought, and this kind of started the big beat rolling. When I got drafted in the Army, from being so popular for integrating the South, and wherever, well, America needed integration at that time, and this music integrated most of the skating rings in America. So by me being so popular, they drafted me in the Army thinking that would stop the big beat. When I got out, the beat just kept rolling.
You know, since you brought up the Army, can we talk about the time that you went AWOL?
Yes, you could, because
I think it's a good little story.
it is. It is. I just didn't think that, I had 5 brothers in that service. And back in the day when, in the Korean War conflict, the military should have only taken 4 from a family. My 5th brother had to volunteer for the Coast Guard. He could not go in armed service. But when Lord and Miss Claudia hit, and all these kids now want to dance to this music, the draft board called me in and told me that the chairman of the Armed Service Committee wants you in the Army. And I couldn't understand that, of course, because I already had 5 brothers in the service. But they took me anyway and sent me on over to Korea. And the beat kept going. So when the beat kept going, the independent record companies had to find a Lloyd Price or Lord and Miss Claudia. Before that period, what happened was the big companies only recorded great singers. You know, Ben Crosby, Nat Cole, and those are like these people who had star quality in Hollywood. That was the recording artists for the big companies. There was only a couple of big companies, RCA, and there was, of course, Decca, and of course, there was Mercury, and the Capitol, of course, was an English company. So it was very, 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 very close. When Nat Cole recorded with strings, that was huge, coming from a Nat Cole trio. So Lottie Miss Claudia changed the sound of music and changed the buying pattern of music in America. And that's what happened. When I got out of service, everybody was into that beat. So I made a couple of records with that same beat, and it didn't happen. So one day I was on my way home, and I heard an opera, and I think it was called Caranomine. It was Rigoletto, and there was a song in there called Caranomine, and the melody was la-di-da-di-da-da-da-da-da. And it sounded like a musical scale. And I said, just because you left and said goodbye. And that was my first big record out of the service. And then came Stagger Lee. Stagger Lee was a play I written while in Korea, in special service, entertaining the troops. I needed something to entertain the field grade officers, the generals, and I got tired of doing Tea for Two and Apple, and Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom White, Fly Me to the Moon, things like that. So I wanted to write something different to really entertain the general and the officers.
Now, the problem on that later on was what Dick Clark on American Bandstand said you had to change the lyrics, right? He was a little upset.
That's right, but it never was intended to be a record. It was a B-side. It was a B-side. The hit, I thought, was a song you call You Need Love. You need love.
And then how, Johnny, you're too young.
But I'm gonna get married.
You're too young.
My name she'll carry.
So that was a very important song.
Yeah, again, it was earmarked for the teenagers. And why I wrote that song is because every June when kids would graduate, most of them would get married and their parents would tell them, you're too young. And they insisted on getting married because being in love and whatever other reasons they had. But let me finish tell you about Stagger Lee. Stagger Lee was the B-side. And the top of it, the night was clear and the moon was yellow and the leaves came tumbling down. I had soldiers acting that out on the stage. And it went over really, really good in Korea. But I never thought it'd be a hit record. When I came and did You Need Love for ABC Paramount, Don Costa asked me, did I have a B-side? And I got on the piano and played Stagger Lee. Did one take.
Now, when we were talking, when we got together a couple of weeks ago, we said that one of the revolutionary things you did is that you opened up your own not a record store, the nightclub, in New York, the Turntable. How'd that happen?
Well, that was way later.
I know, but I'm trying to get...
Why it happened, Mike, is because I, as an artist, figured out a long time ago that there got to be some other place for us to work in New York other than the Apollo Theater. Because you go to the Apollo and you're doing 35 shows a week for $2,000, $2,500, $3,000. And doing one night is on the road, you're getting $5,000 and $7,000 a night. It just did not make sense economically. So I said, well, you know what? When I found out that Birdland was going to be closed, I rushed down to the real estate office and got a lease on the place, completely stripped it, redone it, and made it Lloyd Price's Turntable, there at 52nd Street and Broadway, to get to rhythm and blues artists downtown across 110th Street. Because the Basin Street East, the Copacabana, the Raw Box at the Americana, the Palladium, none of these clubs would work R&B artists. They would tell you you need to have a nightclub act. Well, hell, you selling millions of records. Why can't you just go in there and be yourself? So that's one of the reasons why I opened a club on Broadway.
Now, besides you performing there, who else was performing?
Well, when I had James Brown and we tied up traffic on Broadway, the same as he did up on 8th Avenue and 125th Street. The Coasters, Maxine Brown, King Curtis, Johnny Nash, Chubby Checker.
What about your buddy Benny King?
Well, Benny never worked the turntable. Benny came a little later on in the 60s. You know, and Benny was with the Drifters when Clyde McFadden and Charlie Whitehead, Benny was a lead singer. When his time came when these guys decided to go as individual artists.
And Fats, who worked with you on your first song?
Fats Domino played piano on my first 5 records. And Fats knew so much about my music. When I went in the Army, he became Fats Domino with 19 #1 singles from that same beat of Lord and Miss Claudia.
Let's talk about, you moved to Africa. Talk to me about what you did in Africa.
Well, let me tell you why I went to Africa. Because when I opened the club on Broadway, we was doing so much business and changing the whole scene downtown. I was going to be the first black rock artist with a television show. Larry Spangler, the guy that produced the Merv Griffin show, I wrote a song for him. He came out with a film with Fred Williamson, his first big film called Nigger Charlie. And I wrote the theme song to that film. And Larry Spangler was so impressed with me, they had a meeting about should they change that title, I said, why would you change the title? Say, well, Nigger Charlie, in Cleveland may not play well. I said, Nigger Charlie don't play well nowhere. So why don't you keep the title Nigger Charlie? Because could you imagine white people in Mississippi see a big black guy like Fred Williamson knocking out some white guy? Could you imagine the black people would go see that? So leave the title to what it was.
So you have this with...
Yeah, Charles LeBlanc, I think his name was the president of Paramount Pictures. And he agreed with me so much until they decided I should do my own TV show from my club in New York, being the first teenage idol to sell 1 million records, first black guy. I was so many firsts, and they figured I should have a TV show coming from my nightclub in New York. The night we had the press conference, you couldn't get in. They told me that, Lloyd, tomorrow, your face gonna be in 17 Associated Press papers around the world, having the first black nightclub on Broadway, first black TV show. That morning, after the press conference, somebody sneaked in the office and killed my partner. That's why I went to Africa.
So you got to, you spent, no, in Africa was an interesting, one of the major things that you did in Africa is that you had met early in your life this guy who really ran a bar by the name of, what was his name? Your buddy.
Don King?
Don King.
Don. Yeah, Don was my very good friend.
Your friend Don King, who at that time was not a promoter, but you were in Africa at this time.
Well, yeah. Well, Don used to tell me all the time when he came out of school, man, make me big, make me big. I don't ever want to go back to jail. Never, never, never. So I introduced him to Muhammad Ali on his daughter's 5th birthday. And I had, at that time, he was Cassius Clay. I had him to sing happy birthday to her. And Don said, man, let me talk to the champ. Let me talk to the champ. So he got on the phone and talked with Ali. And then he decided this is what he wanted to do. Don was very big out in Cleveland with numbers, and he had a nightclub. I made him build a club as big as a Copa for me in Cleveland at 7, 8 and Cedar to put my band in. Well, I didn't make him do it. I said, the only way you want me to work your club, you got to give me something to work in.
Now, how'd you and he come out with the idea to go to this fledgling Time Warner Amex company to do pay-per-view on the fight?
Well, actually, it wasn't Time Warner. It was a company called Video Techniques.
Right, which was subsequently acquired by Time Warner.
Because at that time, it was pay-for-view. It was pay-for-view. And we couldn't get no money here in America. We couldn't get nobody to give these two guys $5 million apiece. The most money any athlete, well, let me give you an example. Mickey Mantle, I think, was making $110,000 a year. Willie Mays was getting $80,000. We giving 2 black guys $5 million apiece. Could you imagine what that sound like? Going to
sounds like the movie. Could have had the same thing. Okay.
So we couldn't find no money, but what happened? John Daly with Hemdale Leisure Corporation, he produced the Platoons, the last Emperor, had a lot of big films. Well, at that time, he put up $1.5 million for the ancillary rights for the fight. And Don was in Paris trying to find some people to invest money. He saw a black guy walking somewhere around the Champs-Elysees, and he thought it was somebody he knew from Cleveland. The guy's name was Manduga Bula. He was an advisor to Mobutu, spoke 7 different languages. When Don walked up to him and said, "Hey, brother," he started speaking in German. So Don told him that what he needed, but Mobutu needed something at the same time. Mobutu had just changed the Belgium Congo to Zaire. He needed to get that name ahead of what he had done. And of course, Patricia Lumumba had just got killed down there. There's a lot of problems going on in the Belgium Congo.
So this was a good PR for them.
It was great PR. Don told him, "We'll bring you 6,000 people down here, and we'll do this, and we'll get all the press in the world to come see this fight with George Foreman and Muhammad Ali." 45 minutes, and Mobutu put up the money for the fight.
1980, you come back. You come back to do what? I mean, I know you did. You came back. Part of it was Mayor Koch was doing some helping the city grow, but you built 42 3-family homes
Up in Harlem at 184th and Valentine. I built 60 out in Staten Island, but that was part of the things I was doing. While I came back, our government was overthrown. The soldiers came back and decided to take the country back again. So we had to find something to do, and most of the government officials was here with me. And by me being a businessman here in New York, I found out that the New York Partnership was looking for developers. So I put together Lloyd Price Developing Company, and
you built in Staten Island and up in Harlem.
Yes.
Now, with regard to Lloyd Price being the entrepreneur, how do you come out with Lottie Miss Claudia, you know, the cookies and the sweet potato? How do you decide to go into the food business?
Well, there's a food.
I know Mom had the restaurant, you know, so you had the roots over there, but you didn't open up the Lloyd Price barbecue restaurant, but you went into the good natural foods and you went in there. How did you decide to go into that business?
Well, going into the food business was one of my life's dreams. When Muhammad Ali was the biggest icon in the world, I went to a company called Iowa Beef to get Ali to, I was going to use a logo called Champs Chicken. And I wanted Iowa Beef to private label that stuff, and they were going to do it. Frank Perdue was selling 263 million pounds of chicken a year in Harlem. So I figured if I got Ali's name, Jim Brown's name, Althayer's name, every 6 months I changed my.
You don't think if he had Mike Stoller's name?
Mike Stoller would work.
Okay.
Cousin Ali was Stoller.
Right, okay.
So Champ Chicken would work. And we would sell 100 million pounds of that chicken and just snatch a little piece of that Purdue's business out of Harlem. I was only thinking Harlem. But then they wanted to expand the idea to do it all over the world. Sell prayer rugs, sell beads, and do everywhere. Well, it took about 10, 13 months for for Chicago to agree and Ali's lawyers. So it was taking too much time, and Iowa Beef decided not to do it. 35 years later, here is Walmart. And I said, well, you know what? I go in Walmart, look at the shelves. I see Aunt Jemima, which is not a black product. I see Uncle Ben's, which is not a black product. I see Cream of Wheat, which is not a black product. So the question in the paper was, why isn't there a general food, African-American general food company in America? And that's why you see this. It's more than sweet potato product. That's only one of the items.
No, but that was one of the items, and then the cookies were another.
The cookies, that's it, because in these big stores, you have to have a niche. 80% of all shelf space in America is controlled by 4 companies. So if you don't have something special to give Walmart got 72,000 vendors, do nearly 3 billion transactions a day. You must have something to get shelf space. And I went to Bentonville and showed them this package. And he said, what is it? I said, a sweet potato cookie. In 5 minutes, he says, you have space.
That's great. So, a number of years ago, you wrote this book, this Lottie Miss Claudia, The True Kings of the 50s, the Lloyd Price story. People don't realize, I mean, you know, 1998, it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but you have other places that you've also. let's talk about some of the other places. The National Sports.
Yeah, National Sports and Entertainment. That's a Hall of Fame here in New York.
How'd that happen?
They found out that I was worthy of being in that Hall of Fame.
Now, what's very interesting, some people have the Super Bowl ring. You happen to have your 300 bowling ring, right?
That's a perfect game. United Bowling Congress. I have 6 of them. But, I've been bowling all my life. Why? Because it's an indoor sport, and I work at night, and most of the time bowling alleys would be open all night long. So when I finished doing the show, I would go bowling. I don't drink or smoke, so that was my activity.
Now, how did you get into bowling originally? You
was
were
a pin boy.
You were a pin boy, right?
9 years old, I was a pin boy, and been working ever since.
Now, the Rhythm and Blues.
Rhythm and Blues Foundation. Yeah, I'm in that, yeah. And I'm in the South Carolina Hall of Fame. I'm in
Now,
Sweden.
there's a great picture over here. You got an honorary doctorate in
Oh, yes,
years
my
ago?
doctorate from Southern University.
Right. So now, in the 90s, you went back, you toured with Huey Lewis, you did a couple of things. Let's talk about some of those, the revival of the music career.
Yeah, well, Huey Lewis is a real good friend of mine. He and Bob Brown, Bob is his manager. Dear, dear friends. And I love the music. And a lot of folks say Huey sounded like my music back during the day when I was doing it. But I decided to go back to do music because there's an open hole to do great music. People have not forgot standards. When you listen to some of the music today, 80% of it are using the same tracks, the electric, and there's an artist get on top of it and start rapping. But I think people want to hear melodies, and they want to hear a nice big band sound, musical sound, because 10,000 baby boomers every day turn 65. So there's millions of them who relates to Eptide, Fly Me to the Moon, There Goes That Song Again, and of course one of Carole King's great songs, Will You Love Me Tomorrow?
Let's talk about, the amount of times and the artists who have re-recorded Stagger Lee and Personality. Those are the two major ones. But in addition to that, there are all these companies who have utilized the music from Personality. Tell me about that.
Oh, Personality has been recorded in 17 different languages. It's been recorded 178 times. General Motors, Howard Johnson, Fiat. I can't name the companies.
Now, what do they do with the Personality music?
Well, they sometimes change the lyrics. The important thing is keep the melody in the hook. You might say, Mike Stuhler got personality. They change it. Howard Johnson has personality. General Motors got a new car, got personality, and that's why it's been used so much. Stagger Lee been recorded 268 times. Lord and Miss Claudia 169 times by the biggest rock artists in the world, starting with Elvis Presley, the Beatles, John Lennon, Paul McCartney. They all recorded it singly. Fats Domino, Richard, James Brown. I could not name all of them who's done it.
Now, what about, I'm not sure when it was, you did something with Alan Freed's son?
Alan Freed, yeah, Lance Freed. Lance Freed is the president and CEO of Rondo Irving Music, which is Herb Apple and Jerry Moss. They are the administrators of my publishing my songs around the world. Yes, and Lance Freed is a real good guy.
So let's talk about, since you're still a kid, talk to me about, the book you wrote. Let's talk about the play. Tell me about what you want to do with the play, you, Phil Ramone, and all the rest on, which I know will be a great success.
Well, Mike, the Lord and Miss Claudia, the musical, is telling the story, most of what I just told you. It's about a young kid.
See, the real key is I have to be the one to tell the initial story, over there. But no, okay, so it's a young kid, right?
7 years old. He started dancing, and actually, let me tell you, the first song I ever heard in my life I was sweeping this place they call a juke. You know, in the South there was had one big building, had a side for the white, a side for the black.
Right, but you get the quarter.
Yeah,
right?
I was sweep
you got
every
the two,
Monday.
You got the quarters of
That's
it,
right. If I swept both sides, I got
You got
4 bits.
4 bits, right, right. And you had the spittoons too, right?
That's right. That's right. And the first song I ever heard that really got my attention, it was the nigger and the white man playing 5 up. The nigger beat the white man, scared to pick it up. You got to bottle up and go, by a guy called Johnny Cunningham. With a guitar, there was no melody. You know, there was no timing, no meter, nothing. He was back there with Bessie Smith and, you know, back during that time.
So you want to go back to the time when you're 7?
I wanted to get in that jukebox because I heard that music coming out of that box. And I said, oh, man. From 7 years old, I had the imagination that one day I would be on a jukebox.
But you told me the jukebox, which was in your mother's place, right?
Yeah, well.
It didn't have too many songs, right?
No, well, when I was like 13, 14 years old, my mother had a sandwich shop where she sold fish sandwiches on the weekend. And they had 10 records on the box. I knew both sides of the record. I would sing it, get out on the floor and dance there, throw nickels and dime out there. And Lloyd Jordan was the king of the jukebox during that time. And I would sing all of his numbers. I knew them all. Of course, Charles Brown, Amos Milburn. I knew all those songs. And they would just keep playing those 10 songs, and I would dance until she closed at night.
So let's talk. Children. You have any, how many kids you have?
I have 3 daughters and 2 sons.
What are they doing today?
Well, they are married, and 3 of them live in Atlanta, 1 lives in Baltimore, and 1 lives in Detroit.
And how many grandkids you got over there?
I have 11 grandkids.
11 grandkids.
Yes.
And you keep active over there with, how's this doing? This is on Amazon right now?
That's on Amazon, and that's on Lloyd Price Music, Amazon.com and LloydPriceMusic.com.
Okay.
Go up and you can get a thrill for
Hey, you know it's better. You know, what's really been the good thing of Pandora, iHeart, and Spotify is that people can go in and put the word the same way I did this weekend to make sure that I could hear some Lloyd Price music. Was put in Lloyd Price, and you can hear some of the original Lloyd Price songs.
That's right.
You know, and it's a great situation, and I'm really happy that I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Lloyd Price, and I hope that the show comes out, and I'll be there, and we'll do more songs together.
We've been looking for you, Mike, and you got to sing Johnny, You're Too Young.
Okay, take care. Thanks for being here today.